Well, good evening, everyone. We're just waiting for the transportation engineer. This is a meeting of the Transportation Subcommittee. We're waiting for the engineer to come back with copies of some of the items we're discussing tonight. So we'll, and Council Cirillo will not be joining us. She's not feeling well, so. Okay, we're on schedule here. So there were two items that have been referred to the subcommittee, but before we begin the discussion, can the clerk please call roll?
Chairman Elliott.
Here.
Council Cirillo. Council Conway.
Here.
Three present.
Three present.
Two present, excuse me.
Wait a minute, I repeated it. Okay, so, sorry, it's just going to be one of those nights. So thank you, everybody, for coming in the audience. And so there are essentially two items. One was a walkability issue in the acre, which coincides with the presentation that the traffic engineer has regarding neighborhood traffic calming. It's a policy flow chart. So with that, why don't we go to that one first, and then we'll get to the market basket, the new market basket in Pawtucketville, and traffic issues that were raised at a city council meeting. I know there was a lengthy process that the organization went through initially months ago on market basket, but why don't we get to that? So transportation, it's this subcommittee has met, I believe, 5 times, which is a record as long as I have been here, but with due cause, knowing all the traffic issues. Just for the folks here, maybe for the people at home watching, before we get into this, it just came to my mind that I think it's worthy of mentioning the Central Street Bridge. It certainly has caused great pain in the past, but we knew that. And we took measures to try to mitigate the congestion, but it went from bad to worse. And because of the complications in the construction, the subsurface, that the bridge is going to actually be reopened and construction will stop, but it's going to get worse. So can you let us, can you just give us a I don't know, 2-minute wrap up of what has taken place,
Sure.
what is taking place, and what will take place?
Yes, sure. So Natasha Vance, transportation engineer for the city. Central Street is one of the Tiger Bridges, one of the 5 projects, and it is a difficult.
Can I just, for those folks at home, you keep saying Tiger Bridges,
Oh,
we
sure.
refer to Tiger Bridges, and it's good for all of us here, the policy people, but it's a federal grant that we
Yeah.
refer to as a Tiger because it's transportation infrastructure. It's an acronym.
Something grant.
Emergency.
Yeah,
So,
I'm not sure.
But we received $13 million to do our bridges.
Yes.
The bridges that we essentially took over because they were in such disrepair, and L will just keep
Correct.
them at the medium standard. So I just,
Yeah.
for the folks that are watching home, when they do replay this, the Tiger Bridges, federal money that we did receive, and we
Yes.
refer these bridges to those.
Correct.
Okay.
So the money is from FHWA. Because the federal government can't give money directly to a municipality, the money goes to MassDOT. So MassDOT is actually managing the bridge projects, whereas the city is, the contractor has a contract with MassDOT, and then the city is managing the remainder of the project in terms of the scheduling and approving various measures, including traffic management plans. As you stated, there are 5 bridges, one of which is already complete, several of which are, nearing completion in the next few months. Central Street has been a problematic, difficult bridge. It is in poor shape. I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, a portion of the bridge was repaired. This project will extend the life of the bridge. Again, it still probably will ultimately need a full replacement in the 25 to 30-year time span. One of the complicating factors of that bridge is that it has so many utilities on it, and the canal that it goes over contains an very aged cable that Enel uses to send electricity that it's generating back to, so that it can send it to the grid. So it's a really sensitive subject for a number of reasons. Enel, because of their power cable, which is difficult to move, they can't completely de-energize it. And then in addition, the National Park Service, as everyone is aware, has a piece of artwork that's on some old foundations from previous buildings, and that's a very fragile thing. So there's some concern about the walls that artwork is on. There's concern about moving the cable, and then in addition, I believe it's every 7 years, the FERC requires companies that generate power to perform a number of analyses, and for hydroelectric power, in this instance, they have to perform a fish study, and it has to be performed at a certain time of year. So that is also complicating. So we had a short window of time to complete construction, the piece of construction we wanted to get done this year on the Central Street Bridge. That window, I believe, was June through September, because the bridge had to be, the water in the canal had to be allowed to go back into the canal so that they could do the fish study in normal flow circumstances. The contractor was unable to dewater the canal sufficiently to do the substructure work that they wanted to get done. So that's something that we're still trying to figure out what the solution to that is. So the end result of that is the project will be demobilized. It will open up traffic completely again, while our designers and MassDOT and FHWA and the city and the National Park Service and Enel work toward an agreement to figure out the best solution going forward for this bridge.
Great.
So I would expect.
I know that wasn't subject matter for this, but I thought
no
it was
problem.
worthy of mention. And the bridge will be safe, but
Yes.
it will undergo another design and then more construction. So
Yes.
I personally think, considering the complexity of that project, and I know we'll learn more, but the traffic congestion was just it was crazy. Maybe we should think about closing the bridge down. It'll shorten. That's a 3-year
Yeah.
project.
So if we close the bridge down, it will be a 1-year closure, so that's not off the table. It just would be very difficult during the Lord Overpass construction to eliminate one other path into the downtown. So that is something that is on the table. It's just we haven't determined sort of the ramifications.
I shouldn't say that and raise alarms for those businesses downtown. We don't want to do that, but
No.
that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is it doesn't seem feasible to close the bridge
Okay.
simply because of the all of the other projects. But that being said, we have all options on the table simply because we need to figure out how to manage all of those pieces and parts and protect National Park Service property and the city's infrastructure and Annel's. So it's complex. It's extremely complex.
Okay.
So, and we don't want to rush.
Neighborhood traffic calming.
Sure.
Policy.
Okay. And I assume people at home can see the screen. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So one of the issues that gets raised a lot for the transportation engineer is that people request four-way stops or just complain about cut-through traffic, people speeding on neighborhood streets, et cetera, which is a public safety concern. But typically if we put in a four-way stop where it isn't warranted, and there are requirements based on the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices, when a four-way stop is warranted. It can be warranted based on crashes or traffic volume or various other things. But a lot of times a neighborhood or a person will request a four-way stop, and that's not the answer. And what they're really asking for is traffic calming. A lot of communities across the country have traffic calming policies, and this way it sort of creates a formal process for residents to say this is a problem, bring it to the city's attention, and then there's a step-by-step process that we would go through in conjunction with the neighborhood to try and remedy the situation. So this is a draft policy, so we're working on it. Some of the things that can work, I have a few examples up here, chicanes, mini roundabouts, pavement markings, speed tables, raised crosswalks, and roundabouts, and I'll give you some examples. So a chicane is essentially, it's a horizontal impediment that essentially, instead of it being a straight shot that's very easy to speed on, it's an artificial curve created in the car, and it can be as inexpensive as the picture on the bottom, which is tape and some flex posts. That's like kind of like a pilot study, so you put those in, you look and see if the traffic speed decreases, and then you go back and put in a nicer option like the two above, one of which has a path through for drainage, the one on the right, and then on the left, drainage is not an issue because of the road grade. But so that's one example of a potential traffic calming solution. A mini roundabout can really work well in some of these small neighborhood streets where they're looking for four-way stops. It forces cars to slow down because they have to slow down to go around the mini roundabout. Again, you can put those in with paint, with pavement markings, with big planters. We can do pilot programs and see if that helps with signage and sort of more temporary things. And if it does work, then try to find money in the budget to put in a permanent curbing, which is of course more expensive. Another option is speed tables. I know several councilors have raised questions about this as well. The black and yellow ones that you see on the right are actually rubber, and they're not exactly temporary, but they're similar to the speed bumps that you'll see in parking lots sometimes that are black and yellow, and they're hard rubber, and they're basically bolted into the ground. And then, of course, there's also a concrete or an asphalt version, which is more permanent. And again, the idea behind that is it makes cars go over a vertical impediment, which is uncomfortable to do at a high speed. So it causes them to go more slowly. In the instance on the lower left, there's a speed table right before a crosswalk. Sometimes you'll see those combined into a raised crosswalk. So that's one option. Another option is curb bump outs. Those improve pedestrian safety by shortening the path. Sorry.
Excuse me, do we end up putting a speed bump or speed table at Manufacturers Street? I know that there was a...
So yeah, that was not completely resolved. There were some issues with plowing. So one of the concerns that DPW continues to raise is plowing. When we look at varying the at vertical elements. But there are a number of communities in Massachusetts that also have to plow their streets who do have these. So I believe we would have to purchase a plow blade. It's called a floating plow blade. So I guess it wouldn't, and I'll be honest, this is not my forte, but
Right.
there are ways to do it, but that's an investment the city would have to make in those locations, which I personally think would be worth it, because I think it's an effective way to slow people down. So but it's something we would have to discuss, with the DPW commissioner and, yeah.
For those tables or permanent, if it was just, because those are rubberized.
The ones on the side, for the permanent ones, I believe the rubberized ones might be able to be removed.
Okay.
But, yeah.
No, I just happen to think, and I understand the issues with the plows.
Sure.
But it's become a systemic problem of, and I was going to ask you a little bit later in the meeting, but while we're on it, how many cars traverse each one of our bridges every day?
Oh.
'Cause, Lowell's become a cut-through community.
Yeah.
Going to Route 3, 495, and I know on the average, I'll say about 30,000 cars per day, and not all of them are going to the highways.
Sure.
Clearly, some are coming into town, they come into the schools.
Yeah.
But I think a high proportion, they're just cutting through, which is why this subcommittee and you have spent an inordinate amount of time, because that's what we hear from people.
Sure.
It's traffic congestion, it's speeding, and the volume of cars is only getting
Yeah.
significantly
I
more.
don't know the numbers of but it's definitely in the tens of thousands for the bridges. To your point, we are sort of the main mechanism for people from southern New Hampshire and northern Massachusetts to get to Route 3 and 495 and points south, Boston and Burlington. So we do have a lot of cut-through traffic.
Councilor Conway.
Yeah, just to put things in perspective here, these chicanes, if you go back for a second, excuse me, what does something like that cost?
So the one on the bottom that's temporary would be hundreds of dollars, so
Right.
almost nothing. The ones on the top would be, it would depend, but it can be anywhere from $10,000 or $20,000 for a couple, because you're talking about curb, and it also depends on what's behind the curb. So it's resetting curb. There's potentially drainage impacts that can make it considerably more expensive if we have to add catch basins, pipes, things like that. So, I could give you a price range of anywhere from $20,000 to $250,000. Like, it would depend on the complexity of the project and how many chicanes we put in. But it is a very feasible solution.
Okay.
And the picture on the upper right shows where you're not impacting drainage, where it's sort of almost like a arched shaped island that's out in the
Right.
street.
Right. Now, on the next page there, it says that we're just talking about the speed bumps. Now, what would the cost be for what we're looking at right there, where the car's going over, bottom right? What would something like that cost?
So we've priced those in the less than 20,000 range if it's asphalt, and again, doesn't need drainage.
So that's not movable, that's permanent,
That would be a
correct?
permanent one.
Right.
I have a contact for the movable ones. I don't know their price off the top, but I would certainly assume they would be less expensive than a
Okay.
permanent.
Now, I think it was last city council meeting that you brought forward, I believe there was grant money that was available.
Sure.
Was it something like $85,000 or $95,000? And, excuse me, and you mentioned that it could be spent, it was a narrow window of what, should we
Yeah,
say?
so that
what we-
is the Uber and Lyft funding, and
Right.
it's, yeah.
But the question I have here is, could grant money be spent for something like that, because we're talking about traffic?
Yes.
Because, because what we did was, we spent X amount of dollars for a bike study,
But master plan,
correct?
Yeah.
But we could have spent it on these, is that
Well,
correct?
I don't think we could actually have spent it on this particular thing, just because that particular source of funding is very narrow. You have to use the Uber and Lyft funds to analyze the impact transportation network companies have on our streets or on alternative modes
Okay,
of
so-
transportation.
Okay, so then I think you answered my question. Then we couldn't use grant money like that to do these speed bumps. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
however, there are grants available for projects like this. You can, you might be able to leverage Safe Routes to School funding for that. There's also I actually did receive some CDBG funding for improving pedestrian and ADA accessibility in the community, and one of the locations was based on the CBA's work with Walk Boston and the community group.
So we would have money available now for these?
Yes.
Do you have any idea how much money we'd have available?
Well, so it's not a great deal of money. I believe the total sum is $75,000, and I don't know necessarily how far that's going to go.
Okay.
But
All right, thank
okay,
you.
sure. Okay, so speed tables are a vertical impediment, and then curb bump outs are another horizontal impediment. They also allow pedestrians to be able to see oncoming traffic better because they're sort of out into the road, but in a safe place. The policy it's a draft policy, it's still being worked through, but essentially, people in the community would gain consensus in their neighborhood and report the problem. I've developed a form that they would fill out that would be available online, that they would submit either handwritten or mail it, or via a fillable PDF online. And then the city would investigate and do some data collection, including most likely speed studies to establish the speed that traffic is traveling. And there would need to be a primary neighborhood contact. And we would basically go through some studies, come up with a plan, and figure out a way to fund it. And then evaluate it throughout the process. I don't know how visible this is to people at home. It's not very visible to me, to be honest. But that's essentially, so there's sort of two phases to it. So the first phase would be sort of like low-level, low-cost enforcement, signage, pilot programs, and evaluate how those are working, and base that on data. So if we do a speed study and we determine that traffic is traveling 10 miles an hour over the appropriate speed for that street, and we enact some of these things and it doesn't have an impact, then we would go to a phase 2. And the phase 2 would be a more elaborate process. And in all cases, the residents would be involved in the design process, because a lot of times when we enact traffic calming, sometimes it impacts parking, which is a huge issue in the city of Lowell. So there would need to be buy-in from the residents, and a majority of the residents would be in agreement that this is an appropriate move. So that's all I have on that. I know that there is at least one person here who might want to comment, but
Yeah, why don't we go right to the public, Mr. Clerk? Do they register?
No,
or
they don't have to, just open it up. They'll come.
Yeah, no, it's a public meeting, so please feel free to come to the podium.
Hello. So my name is Aurora Erickson. I live downtown. I work at Coalition for a Better Acre. And I just want to briefly speak in support and say how much we've appreciated working with Natasha. So CBA, Coalition for a Better Acre, has a walking safety group that's been meeting regularly and talking about problem areas in the neighborhood. Many of our residents are regular walkers, primarily walkers, and are very concerned about where it's safe and not safe to walk, and particularly about some intersections and some crosswalks that are very intense to cross to the point of being unsafe. So we've been talking about those areas of concern, and we've been able to reach out to the city. And Natasha's been very generous with her time, very thoughtful in her responses as we've raised things that we are concerned about, and I just really appreciate her and her staff and how responsive they've been. We've also been working in collaboration with Walk Boston, which is an organization that talks a lot about pedestrian safety and has brought some tools we can use, which has been really fun. And they were really expressive about how great Lowell has been to work with, especially compared to other cities. They were really excited about how open they were to our concerns and about seeing walking safety as a real issue that the city was willing to take on. So I just want to say how great that's been. I also just generally want to be in support of this process. I think the more it can be clear how we make these decisions, and especially to residents, how they ask for help with something, how they raise a concern, the better things are going to work. I would say if we could think a little bit about language inclusion, just because that's always an issue in our city. How would this process work for residents that are more comfortable in other languages, that may miss something that isn't coming to them in their own language? And the more the city can continue to work with us, CB is always really happy to spread the word about things and to invite residents to participate in the community process. But that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aurora. If there's, if there's something that the subcommittee can go, if there's a meeting, do you have regular meetings, you say, with your group, and it's well attended?
We do. Yeah, we meet just about once a month, kind of when we can get folks together. Councilor Noon has come to our meetings before, and he was very responsive and helpful in connecting with us with city folks. So yeah, definitely we'd love to have you.
Okay. Just let us know, reach out to us, because we'll just keep scheduling here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good. Anyone else want to speak on the draft traffic calming policy? So, Natasha, what's your, I didn't see anybody, right? What is your expectations for this policy? What's the next step? You want this
So,
to bring it to the council for a discussion, refer it to you for, go ahead.
well, I was thinking right now it's still in draft form, I can finalize it and then bring it back to the council for their comment and review. And then assuming I don't know what the appropriate process would be to get approval from the council to enact it. And then I would want to post the policy itself, the guidelines and the form and maybe some helpful links on the transportation engineer website. And then Aurora makes a great point that we would need to have some other language options available for people who don't necessarily read or speak English. So.
Yeah, I think it makes some sense. Perhaps if you get this in a more final form, we can meet again,
Okay.
and it might even be helpful to go out to various neighborhood organizations. You know, they have monthly meetings, so
Yeah.
it wouldn't be the worst thing to go out and introduce this, because that's 9 times out of 10, unless it comes to you, where the concerns are, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
four-way stops or parking issues, or speeding.
Yeah,
So,
cut through traffic.
Is it the intention to bring it back before the council in the form of an ordinance or not?
I don't know the answer to that. That might be the
Okay.
appropriate way to do it, is
That'll-
create an
that'll-
ordinance.
If
Yeah.
it comes straight to an ordinance, obviously that generates another public hearing.
right.
Okay, but maybe that's the best way to do it, is I can finalize this and draft an ordinance.
Yeah, I would
And-
speak with, perhaps speak with the administration and
Sure.
see if, I don't know if it requires an ordinance. I think it's more of a policy process, because there are other regulations that would also flow into it. But why don't we wait to hear from you? We'll come back, we'll schedule another subcommittee meeting and determine whether it's going to be an ordinance or, city regulations or policy. And then we'll take it from there. Might not be the worst thing to codify it, because then there is a process in place and it doesn't get lost, but
Yeah, okay,
All right.
sounds good, thank you. I will do that.
I don't think there's a motion necessary on that, Counselor. Okay. So that's good, thank you. I think that'll be helpful. As you can see, each week they're on the City Council agenda. There are consistently motions about traffic and safety.
Yes.
So why don't we move on to the market basket? I know Council Leahy's not here, but he had raised some issues and concerns, as well as myself, on the current proposed plan. I don't think, I know it took some great time and went to great lengths, but I'm not sure all of us were keyed in as we perhaps should have. So, thank you. Representative from
Yeah,
Market
do you
Basket.
want me to go over the process a little
Yeah,
bit?
I
or
would
just
go,
have-
can you
okay.
just go over the process
Sure.
just real quick, and then we'll go into,
Sure.
I suppose like everything else, we see construction has been taking place for quite some time, and then traveling that road every single day, 2 and 3, 4 times.
Yeah,
I start thinking, and I did learn about the roundabout, but I can't say, shame on me, I didn't pay as close attention to the planning board process. So, and I think neighbors also have raised concerns. So with that, can you go through
sure.
the process, and then we'll ask the representative to speak? And
Sure. Market Basket is planning to develop the parcel on Old Ferry Road, and a big part of that process was going through site plan review. So that was and they went before the planning board a number of times. I'm going to say three or four times. And, their initial proposal, we reviewed the plans, we made comments on the traffic impacts and on the site plan circulation. Market Basket has a design consultant that has expertise in transportation engineering and traffic engineering and in site development. So they developed estimates of traffic volumes that will be generated by the project. Those numbers were significant enough that they triggered, along with other things, a MEPA review, which is the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act, meaning they would have to get that permit in order to construct the project. So the MEPA process included a number of different things, including wetland impacts, floodplain impacts, traffic impacts, and they proposed a number of mitigation options. And then when the site plan came before the city, we worked with Market Basket and their consultants to fine-tune the traffic impact analysis as well as the mitigation plan. So the traffic mitigation is very significant. In addition, they're providing some cash payments to fund. Initially, we were thinking we needed to replace the traffic controller at the Rourke Bridge, but then before this project could be completed, somebody hit it and we replaced it already. So we have some money that we can spend for traffic improvement at the Rourke Bridge. There are transportation demand measures, a traffic monitoring program, and Rob Nagy from VHB will go into this in more detail, but
Can you tell me before we go any further what
Sure.
the estimates of the volume are?
yes, it was, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was in addition, more than 5,000 vehicles a day is what triggers a MEPA, a new trips a day. Is that correct, Rob?
I'm sorry. It's 3,000 trips a day
sorry.
is what triggers the MEPA.
And what is your estimates for this project?
And this project, I want to give you the exact numbers that we evaluated. This project, all in, was going to be looking at about that's where you got the 5,000.
new.
It's about 5,000 daily trips, of which a lot of that is traffic that's already on the roadway. It's a supermarket development, so a lot of the pass-by traffic are people who are, a lot of their business is drawn from people driving along Pawtucket Boulevard or Varnum, coming into and out of the site, or are going to other supermarkets today, and will likely be coming to this one. We'll be intercepting, for lack of a better term, and bringing them into this site. So it's about 5,000 trips a day coming in and out, and about 450 during the peak commuter hours, new trips coming in and around the area.
So about 400, so there's, 450 new peak vehicle trips. That's a lot of vehicles considering how congested it is now. Okay.
Yeah, so the, and
When you,
I think
I'm sorry,
I'll-
when you say peak, evening?
So yeah, the two critical periods that we looked at were the weekday evening commuter peak hour, anywhere between 4 and 7 o'clock at night, and then also the Saturday midday peak hour. We wanted to do an evaluation of that because that actually is when the supermarket is and the site is generating the most traffic. Volumes out there are a little lighter, but we wanted to make sure that we covered both situations in our
How many do you
analysis.
anticipate on a Saturday? And believe it or not, I think because of the river walk, the use of the river walk, the university students coming over, there's also a soccer field right on the other side, and I know that generates an awful lot of traffic because I'm there every weekend. So, how many on Saturday?
Saturday's a little heavier. It's about 650 cars an hour. And again, when I say cars an hour, I mean about 320 or so coming into the site and 320 leaving the site. Okay. So when I say trips in total, it's in and out.
Okay.
We don't look at.
so did you want me to cover the rest of the mitigation, or do you want Rob to maybe just walk you through the process?
I think you can, I mean, is there much more to it? I mean,
Well, so there are a number of pieces in terms of like so there's some improvements to the signal at Old Ferry and Pawtucket Boulevard. We're going to close up the median U-turn on Pawtucket Boulevard to prevent people from trying to shoot across 2 lanes of traffic because there's a median break opposite JJ Boomers. So people will they can still come out on that side, but they would have to then go to the light to make the U-turn, as opposed to, which is a safety improvement, as opposed to having unrestricted turns. Then
I'm sorry, they'll be able to come out of where?
so there's an
Boomers is going away.
Yeah, so at the time the planning board was looking at this, it was JJ Boomers was still going to be there. Now they're looking at a different retail commercial. I don't know what a different option there. And however, there's
So Boomers is going away, but another commercial spot is coming in?
yeah.
That's not being folded into the Market Basket project?
So the site plan review for right now, the approved site plan that they have, they're not changing their footprint, so they can continue construction. They are, however, coming back for a revision to their special permit because of those changes. And I think it'll probably be simpler. Let me just turn it over to Rob. He can walk you
Okay.
through the whole thing. And
Yep.
Yep.
First of all, thank you for coming, and I have been to a lot of meetings, but
No, my
I don't want
pleasure.
to say this is last minute, but it kind of is yet, given the volume of traffic and even outside of the development project, it's gotten significantly worse, in large part because of the bridge and the access to Route 3, so.
Yeah,
All of which you know.
very aware of everything that's going on out here. Again, so it's Rob Nagy with Vanessa Hengen-Bruslin. I've been the traffic engineer with all of Market Basket's projects over the past 4 or 5 years, looking at a bunch of different sites for them. When this one came to us and we started our assessment of the project, we did some pretty detailed outreach and some data collection out here to make sure that we understood what was going on, where some of the issues were going to be. And typically what we do with Market Basket in those situations is come to them and say, listen, here's where your congestion points are. We're going to need to come up with solutions, not only to your impacts, but the existing impacts that are there today. So with that as the background, we ended up coming to the city, making a formal application. Natasha did outline the MEPA process, the state process, that really focused on some of the Pawtucket Boulevard issues, particularly the traffic signal at the end of Old Ferry and Pawtucket, making sure that that was going to be operating safely and efficiently. And then dealing with the planning board process and the city and making sure that we came through with a plan that we were comfortable with and the city was comfortable with. At the end of the day, I think it's important to sort of take a step back and look at the process that we went through. As Natasha mentioned, we probably had 3 or 4 meetings with the planning board itself, had several meetings with the neighborhood, the Pawtucketville citizens group out there, making sure that they were comfortable with it. And at the end of the day, I wish I could say that they were completely comfortable with the folks that we met with out there, but it was sort of a give and take. We'd like to develop this site. What can we offer you? What can you work with us? The initial recommendation that we came with, I think they were mostly focused at the intersection of Varnum and Old Ferry Road and some of the concerns, both safety-wise and operationally, what was happening out there with typical long congestion and using it as a cut-through route. The initial plan that we had out there to mitigate the project impacts and to address some of the existing impacts out there today was to signalize the intersection. We demonstrated that would work, but through the peer review process, the city actually hired their own consultant to review our work as well. And so we had essentially 3 sets of eyes looking at the project, both MassDOT from the state level, Natasha and her staff working at the city level, and then a third independent peer review consultant working for the planning board. We identified that a roundabout at that location would actually be a much cleaner, much more neighborhood-friendly solution to moving traffic through that, both safely, efficiently, and wouldn't have sort of the urban feel of a traffic signal there. There was a few issues that came up with that, and land acquisition being one of them. A roundabout takes a bigger footprint to put in than a traffic signal. But working with the city and working with Market Basket, everybody kind of came to an agreement that was the right solution to do. And R.D. Demoulas himself actually came to us and said, I know it's about $450,000 more expensive than the traffic signal to build, but it's the right thing to do, so let's let's build that for the neighborhood. If Rob asking me if you're comfortable that this truly is going to work, and I told him absolutely, it's the home run solution. So I think with that, the neighborhood seemed very happy with it, the planning board seemed happy with it, and that ultimately was conditioned into our plan. Unique to this project, one of the things I think is important is for your comfort as well as you look at the project and where it's come from and where it's going to, is there's also a condition in our permit that says we're to do post-monitoring studies of what our estimates were in our traffic studies and how we generated the traffic for the project and how we distributed it onto the roadways, and then come back to you 6 months, I think 2 years after the opening of the store, and report back to the city and say, hey, listen, we were right, we were wrong, and here is what the impacts of the project actually are as opposed to what we think they were going to be. We work in a planner's environment, and we try to estimate where we think traffic's coming from and going to, and we use industry standards to try to project what that traffic is going to be. But at the end of the day, I thought the city was actually pretty forward with us and said, we're concerned about what that projection is going to be and how that might be impacting our city roadway and infrastructure after the fact. So we agreed to the condition that we'll come back afterwards with a study, and if there is something that's happening that we didn't project, we didn't consider, whether it be cut-through traffic or poor operations at the intersections that we just talked about, we're actually on the hook to come back and mitigate those impacts as well. That's not something that a lot of my developer clients do, but Market Basket and their ties to Lowell has been something that they really wanted to, make sure that they do it right. They do it right the first time and continue to do it moving forward. So, Natasha went through a few of the other little minor items with sort of safety upgrades at the Rourke Bridge intersection with Pawtucket, the closure of the U-turn movement along Pawtucket Boulevard, just to make sure it's a safer environment. We also looked at pedestrian connections. We're close to a residential neighborhood, obviously, and we wanted to make sure that folks who did want to walk or even bike to our facility, have the option to do so. There's sidewalks that are on Old Ferry, and we provided sidewalks on the site side, which aren't there today, so that anybody who wanted to sort of walk onto the site could do so safely and not have to worry about walking in the median or wherever out there. So that's, in summary,
Ron,
that's...
Could I interrupt you?
Sure.
And I don't know if you can answer this or not. Will the existing Market Basket remain open? And my reason for that question is, will that traffic be coming over and creating more congestion, or is that going to remain open and then that traffic has to come back out and go back over?
In fact, it was the first question I asked when I was trying to figure out my traffic projections.
Staying open, right? Yeah.
It's staying open.
Yeah, okay.
And in fact, it's going through a city process, if it hasn't already completed the city process, for a parking lot upgrade, putting in some additional landscaping, some additional drainage, and kind of reworking the parking lot on the other side of the bridge there.
I just wanted to mention that that's the Wood Street Market Basket. They're not making any significant changes that actually necessitate a site plan review, but Market Basket is still presenting it to the city and getting our input. They are going to, the most significant improvement that the residents won't see will be additional stormwater detention. So that'll be underneath the parking lot. But then they will also beautify that a little bit and add some landscaping and improve the facade.
Sure.
So I think that'll be nice. But the Market Basket is not actually obligated to do that. I think they're demonstrating that they're a very good corporate citizen of Lowell. So.
So with that, we suspect that most of the traffic will stay on that side of the river. Although this will be a new store, it'll be a bigger store, and there may be additional draw that does come over, which we've accounted for in some of our assessments out there.
Well, let me cut to the chase.
Sure.
So the concern, naturally, I'm thinking in the morning, the peak traffic in the morning, let me just add, are there going to be additional 8 lanes added on Old Ferry Road that will traffic vehicles coming from the north, south, going over the bridge in the morning? And granted, I just sort of realized, Market Basket is open at 7 a.m. So,
They typically open up early.
but that's where the congestion has come out, and it'll back up almost to Varnum Ave.
Yeah, so what they're doing is they're widening out the intersection at Pawtucket, this
Okay.
traffic signal that's there, so there'll be separate left and right, formalized separate left and right turn
There will.
lanes. Yes,
Okay.
down there.
That's significant.
That-
Will that lane carry all the way to the new entrance or exit?
It carries back to the first entrance, the one that is, I guess I would call it just north of JJ Boomer's. So internal to the site, it'll carry back essentially to that location.
Okay.
And so any queuing that does happen there wouldn't block that driveway. We were very cognizant of the fact that that driveway placement was key in the whole layout of the site.
Okay, I have all these questions that I have to answer once I leave here and I go home.
Yep, no, I understand.
Okay, well, thank you. I think that was one of the issues that have come from another member of the council, Council Conway as well. You know, residents are concerned in the morning, and then in the evening, I suppose, I'll understand most people are going in there, and then presumably going north, or north or northwest.
Yep. Most, I mean, again, the driveways are sited in a way to intercept pass-by traffic. That's what retail developments do. They want to grab the traffic that's driving by on Pawtucket Boulevard and bring them on in as conveniently as possible, and then for lack of a better term, deposit them back onto the roadways wherever they wanted to go. Okay. So there's driveways along Pawtucket to sort of intercept traffic that's coming over the bridge so that they can easily get into the site, don't have to go through the intersection at Old Ferry and Pawtucket. And then they can make their way through the site and get onto Old Ferry and travel up north if that's the way
And you
they
will
want
come
to
back to address signals. It's going to be a call light?
Say again?
Signals that when you drive up to it, it'll...
Yeah, so the
What's
signal
it called?
controller,
Signal control.
the signal controller at Old Ferry and Pawtucket is going to be upgraded. One of the things that we need to go out and do is identify where that vehicle detection is going to be. But that's part of the design process that we're engaged with the city in right now. So what we'll do is we'll upgrade the signal there. We'll widen it, as I talked about. We'll do some pedestrian upgrades so that folks actually have sidewalks to cross in front there. And vehicle detection will be integrated into the system as well, so that if there isn't anybody waiting out there, that one person who does show up can get the green light. And if there's a lot of traffic waiting out there, it balances, the signal will use its algorithms and balance the flow to keep things moving.
Thank you. Council Conway has been very patient. I've asked a lot of questions, so it's all yours.
No, I think that you certainly, Mr. Chairman, hit on a lot of the points, and you two have certainly brought forward what this project is all about, and I think you've made it very clear. The one thing I would like to add, which I believe, Natasha, you just mentioned something about the Demoulas being a good business neighbor, which I think is extremely important, and there's no doubt about that. And I certainly congratulate the Demoulas Corporation for being very sensitive to a neighborhood, because a lot of times you'll find that companies will come in, they'll promise anything and everything just to get the project going. Once the project is over and finished, you can't find them. I think that this has been proven true, that this Demoulas Corporation is always there to, if there are any type of issues following up, that I'm sure that they'll be either changed or improved or fixed, whatever it may be. So again, I thank you for your presentation, and I think the chairman certainly has made a lot of great points and brought them out too. So again, thank you very much for being here tonight.
If I could just ask for the next for the council meeting tomorrow night, if you could just maybe PDF me, the subcommittee, the entire council, a snapshot of what that new intersection, or the traffic pattern, the layout of the new, I think that would be helpful to reference as we go through the improvements and the process that the corporate that you
So
went
just
through.
the plan of the roundabout?
Just something that we can reference, that we can look at. I think there is some confusion. How is that going to work in that particular area? And I know conceptually, if I see something,
Sure.
I can understand. But there is some city land there. There's a private piece of property on the corner. Then there's the road, and then...
And then there's a private condo across the street as well. The roundabout is situated to mostly impact the city property. There will be some temporary easements and some small slivers of right-of-way. We're trying to, the VHB designed it such that they're trying not to impact any property other than the cities. But with a roundabout, the thing that makes it work and makes it traffic calming is that you have to have some deflection. So you can't have the road just come straight, like Varnum, come straight through without having to deflect around the circle, that's what slows people down and allows other people to get into the roundabout. But yeah, I can get a copy of that, and I'll make copies for everybody on council so they have it.
Okay. Yeah, because there's a fire station there, and
Sure.
so...
Yeah.
What generally is the circumference of that roundabout?
It's probably about 90 feet in the middle, so,
90 in the middle?
yeah, so you're gonna, what's that?
Diameter or circumference?
Diameter, sorry.
Did I say circumference?
So,
That's okay.
yeah, my head works in the engineering
you're
world,
right,
so-
my bad.
But it's big enough to allow tractor-trailer trucks to make the movement through there, but it's also small enough to, as Natasha said, slow down the traffic. One of the big concerns we heard was that the speed along Varnum was pretty bad,
And that's a
pretty
very
high, and we
dangerous
studied
corner.
it and we saw it. So, and you're coming along, yeah, as you said, a blind corner there, coming over some grades. So to do this out there is really going to slow and, per your prior presentation, calm the traffic through that area, but keep it moving, which is really something that we tried to build into the design.
Good stuff. I'm good.
Okay.
Council Conway's good. Anybody from the audience? Yes.
Hello. My name is Attorney Ashley Baxter. I'm here on behalf of Attorney James Hall and my parents, the owners of 10 Old Ferry Road, Stephen and Vicki O'Neill. Attorney Hall wasn't notified of tonight's meeting, and he's out of state, so unfortunately he couldn't be here, so he asked me to attend on his behalf. I'm just here, simply make this quick, to object to the roundabout. And Attorney Hall has outlined very specifically and in detail the objection to the law department and the planning department. Like I said, he will be back in town tomorrow, so if you have any questions, I can take them back to him and get you responses as early as tomorrow. But that's all I have.
So I can just comment. We
Sure.
have met
What
with
is the
Attorney
nature
Hall.
of the, sure.
Oh, well, so we have met with Attorney Hall and his clients, I believe on 2 separate occasions. We are aware of his concerns and are actively working with him to respond to those concerns.
Great.
Yeah, I don't know what, essentially, the owner of that parcel is concerned about the impact of the roundabout to the buildability of that lot.
Sure.
And to whether or not they can still access it.
Okay. So does the roundabout affect that piece of property? Is it
It
going
is
to?
on the corner of, 10 Old Ferry Road is on the corner of Varnum, and the roundabout impacts a small section of it, yes.
Sure, of course. So what is the status? What's the nature? What's going to happen from here?
So at the moment, we've looked at a number of different solutions. We had a meeting, we discussed some options with the owner and his attorney. No resolution was reached at that point. We actually have some options for him to look at, but they're not formalized yet. And they have to go through the law department, obviously, because it's the attorney to attorney.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
But did I characterize the objections well? Like he's concerned about access to and of
Yes.
course the monument.
Correct.
Yeah.
The monument and access to the property and, usage of the property.
Right.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
that monument has been there
Yeah.
to their parents for
Yeah,
a long
and
time.
as part of the roundabout, we would, the city has offered to locate the relocate the monument so that it's up closer to, because the roundabout will have a little bit of a fill slope, which would essentially put the monument, it might be a little harder to see it because it's sort of down in a bowl right now. So the city has offered to relocate it up closer to the sidewalk pending approval from the owner. But there's more to it than, there's the lot, whether or not it's a buildable lot, whether or not the roundabout prevents providing access to it, and, it is completely in the 100-year floodplain except for a small piece of it, so there would be mitigation concerns. So we're sort of trying to work through all of those problems with the owner.
Okay, so
through-
we're going to
through our
work with the
attorneys.
owner on this, because we went through, Mr. Demoulas rightfully so wants to make sure everyone, it accommodates the neighborhood and folks, and that
Sure.
certainly impacts this property. So, okay, well, you're welcome.
Very much.
Okay, so you'll keep us posted on that issue as
Yeah.
well. And anybody else from the audience want to speak, concerns, issues? Maybe there's another, nope. Okay, thank you very much. Can you pronounce your last name for me again, Ron? Meiji?
It's Nagy.
Nagy.
Yep. Thank you.
N-A-G-E. Thank you for coming. We do appreciate it. I know you've been through a lot of meetings, but
Nope.
finally, when a project hits home and people have concerns, that makes sense. So if we can get that PDF for tomorrow night, I think that'll be
Yes.
helpful. Thank you for your time. We'll come back with the traffic calming measures. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn by Councilor Conway, seconded by myself. All those in favor signify by saying aye, and the opposed. That motion passes. This meeting stands adjourned. Thank you very much.